Welcome to the sport climbing module of our video series. In this video, we'll introduce the fundamental concepts behind sport climbing, such as the proper use of quick draws and clipping techniques for lead climbers, good lead belaying techniques, cleaning sport routes, and rappelling. By the end of this video, you will be introduced to a core skill set that will allow you to launch your sport climbing journey. Sport climbing is a type of lead climbing where the climber uses quick draws and bolts as their primary protection. Typically, this climbing style focuses on the athleticism of the climber rather than the risk management, which coins its name, sport climbing. And for this reason, it's one of the best ways to get new climbers outside. We'll start diving into essentials of this discipline by reviewing the gear.
When setting up a sport route, a lead climber's harness is equipped with quick draws. The anatomy of a quick draw can be divided into three sections. There's a loose carabiner intended to clip to the bolt. There's the dog bone that connects the two carabiners. And then there's a stiff carabiner that's designed to clip to the rope. There are different ways to attach the rope into the quick draw, and much of it boils down to personal preference. But it's typically preferred to avoid styles that involve passing your fingers through the gate of the quick draw, which could cause injury in the event of a fall while clipping. Some clipping styles that avoid this include the thumb clip technique or the roll clip technique. It's always a good idea to practice and experiment with which styles work best for your hands and body position.
When lead climbing, look out for back clipping when the belayer side of the rope is not against the wall and instead in front of the quick draw. This introduces the likelihood for the rope to exit the carabiner in the event that the climber falls above the quick draw. If you find yourself in a position where you're back clipped, you can find a good rest and re-clip the rope if you feel comfortable. Otherwise, call take to your belayer and use a quick draw or PAS to unweight the rope so you can re-clip accordingly. Another hazard to look out for is Z-clipping. This happens when the climber takes slack from behind the last clip draw, creating a Z-like bend in the rope. Here, the lead climber's rope is exiting a quick draw further down the route, creating larger fall potential. To fix this, find a rest stance or transfer your weight to a bolt, and unclip the intermediate quick draw, re-clipping it to the belayer side of the rope.
Finding good clipping stances is an important ingredient for risk management when sport climbing. Clipping requires a comfortable stance, with your weight on your feet are loaded onto your skeletal system using straight arm techniques. You want to minimize the potential for falling when you're making a clip, as the extra slack introduced into the system puts the climber into a vulnerable position. It's also important to be mindful of body position as you climb above the rope. The climber and belayer should be aware whenever a foot, ankle, or leg is behind the rope. Depending on the orientation of the rope and climber, this sets up the possibility for the climber to invert upon falling, as the rope would catch their lower body in the process. An attentive belayer should be on the lookout for this hazard and alert the climber.
A good lead belay can take years to master. We'll cover some of the key concepts to consider. First, it's common practice and good courtesy for the belayer to prep the route for the climber. This includes flaking the climbing rope. Flaking the rope ensures that the rope can feed smoothly into the belay device as the lead climber progresses up the route. Start by tying a terminating knot on the end of the rope, such as a barrel knot. This creates a closed system, ensuring that the rope cannot exit the belay device when lowering, in case the rope is too short for the route. Organize the rope into a neat pile, with the terminating knot on the bottom of the pile and the climber's end on the top of the pile. As you flake, check for any abnormalities in the rope that could compromise its strength as it passes through your hands. We can further prep the route by stick clipping. This removes the hazard of the lead climber decking before they reach the first bolt and allows the lead climber to climb on belay for the entirety of the route. A common type of stick clip involves a painter's pole and an attachment device such as a super clip. Attach the loose end of the quick draw to the super clip such that the gate is partially open and the climbing rope is attached to the fixed end of the quick draw. Raise the painter's pole up to the first bolt. Hook the quick draw into the hanger and pull down. The super clip should release the carabiner, closing the gate and securely attaching the quick draw to the first bolt. From here, the lead climber can begin climbing on belay.
The primary job of a lead belayer is to introduce or take away slack at the appropriate times. When a climber is below a bolt, take slack away as necessary, using the typical top rope belay style. As the climber moves above a bolt, introduce just the right amount of slack to the climber as they advance forward. Be mindful of the fall potential when you give out slack. The more slack, the bigger the fall. When a climber goes to make a clip, you may need to give slack quickly. For some devices like the Petzl Grigri, it can be useful to place your thumb on the cam to prevent the belay device from catching the rope in the event of paying slack quickly. Providing insufficient slack during a clip, also known as short roping, can be a hazard for the climber attempting to make a strenuous clip, as this might cause them to fall. Belayers should always be observing and anticipating when the climber will clip.
There are two types of catches a belayer can offer a climber when falling: a hard catch and a soft catch. We'll discuss both. When a climber is near the ground or closely above hazardous terrain like a ledge, we want to minimize the distance the climber falls on lead. We can achieve this by offering a hard catch, which is when the belayer quickly arrests the falling momentum of the fall. You can give a hard catch by quickly pulling any available slack through the belay device and sinking down deep into your belay stance. Hard catches, per their name, increase the shock load forces on the climber, rope, and climbing protection, so it should only be used when avoiding such hazards. Contrary to hard catches are soft catches. Here, the goal is to minimize the forces. We achieve this when the belayer moves dynamically in the direction of the rope by stepping forward or making a small jump. This tempers the sudden deacceleration of the rope, giving the climber more time to come to a final stop, therefore comfortably reducing the shock loading forces experienced with falling. Be mindful that the climber will naturally fall a longer distance during soft catches, so this technique should only be practiced well above the ground, typically 10 or 15 feet off the deck, and well above ledges or similar terrain hazards.
Now we will discuss cleaning a sport anchor while staying on belay. The climber who plans to clean the route will need a personal anchor system, or PAS, and 2 locking carabiners. There are a variety of PASs on the market, such as this one made by Metolius, with independent sewn rings to offer multiple attachment points at different lengths. These are intended to be girth hitched to your harness's 2 tie-in points. A 120 centimeter sling can also be used as a PAS with several overhand knots tied into it to offer adjustable attachment lengths. This should also be girth hitched to your harness's tie-in points. There are also adjustable lanyards like the Petzl Connect Adjust. These lanyards are intended to be girth hitched to the belay loop and offer smooth adjustability along their length.
After climbing a route, we need to clean the anchor. which means removing all of our personal gear off the anchor and lowering to the ground, leaving nothing on the wall for the next party. The first step to cleaning any anchor is to make a plan. What type of hardware is this anchor equipped with? Mussy hooks or quick links? Rappel rings? Chains, etc. Do I have any climbing protection below me, or is the rope only attached to the anchor? All of these factors will fold into your plan, and ideally the course of action is discussed with your belayer before leaving the ground. When you finish climbing the route and it's time to clean, call take from your belayer as with the completion of any climb. Typically, your rope will be threaded through 2 quick draws at this point. Clip your PAS directly to the meeting point of both quick draws and call for slack. This should transfer your weight from the climbing rope to the PAS. Now is the time where the anchor hardware becomes important. If the anchor is equipped with perma-draws or mussy hooks, simply clip the slack rope to the permas and call take from your belayer. At this point, your weight should go off your PAS and back to the climbing rope. Ensuring your PAS is slack, remove it and any personal gear on the anchor. Ask to lower and retrieve any remaining gear on your way down.
If the anchor is equipped with hardware that is large enough to pass a bight of rope through, such as large quick links or rappel rings, we'll use a different strategy. In this scenario, attach your PAS to the anchor in the same way, calling for slack from your belayer to load and test your PAS. Now, pull up 5 to 10 feet of rope and pass a bight through the rings or quick links. Tie a figure 8 on this bight and attach it to your belay loop with a locking carabiner. Now call take, and the belayer should take your weight on the new figure 8 knot. Once you have confirmed that your weight is transferred, untie your old figure 8 and pull the tail through the anchor. Then you can remove your PAS and retrieve all your personal gear before you lower. By tying the figure 8 on a bight that was threaded through the anchor, we were able to remain on belay during the entire cleaning process, protecting us from any errors that could occur if the PAS failed or was used improperly.
In this final scenario, the anchor hardware does not have mussy hooks or metal hardware wide enough to pass a bight. These anchors are not as common, but it's important to have the toolkit available. We'll begin the same way with the PAS attached to the anchor, taking your weight so the rope is slack. Pull up 5 to 10 feet of rope and tie a figure 8 on a bight, clipping that to your belay loop with a locking carabiner. Next, we will untie the climbing rope from our harness. The figure 8 on a bight serves to both keep us protected via the previous bolt and also keep us from dropping the rope. Untie your original figure 8 follow-through, threading it through the narrow chain, and retie as normal. Now, untie the 8 on a bight and call take, allowing the new nut to take your weight off of your PAS. Clean as usual from here.
A few things to keep in mind when cleaning anchors. First, minimize and clarify conversations between climber and belayer. The only commands needed are take, slack, and lower. This avoids miscommunication and unnecessary noise at the crag. Second, practice on the ground before going up to clean for your first time. Have the system dialed and memorized, because your first attempt could be more nerve-wracking than you think. And finally, always stay on belay. There's no reason to go off belay when cleaning, and it could just save your life in the event of a major error or miscommunication.
The final part of this video will discuss rappelling. Unlike lowering, when rappelling, the rope doesn't move and you're in control of your speed. There are many ways to rappel. We'll go over rappelling on 2 strands with an ATC belay device and a friction hitch backup. We'll want to rig our PAS such that there is an attachment point directly to the anchor and an attachment point to our belay device extended above our belay loop. Note, the further we extend our belay device above our belay loop, the higher the friction and the slower you will rappel. A nylon sling with knots tied along its length gives us similar independent attachment points for our belay device and tether. When using a lanyard, you can clove hitch the rappel device at a distance of your choosing. We will also want a prusik loop, such as a 5mm cordelette tied in a loop, our specialty products like the Sterling hollow block, and an extra locking carabiner to attach it to our belay loop.
In a rappelling scenario, the climber starts with their tether attached directly to the anchor and the rope threaded through the rappel rings. We'll want to make sure that the midpoint of the rope is at the anchor and there are terminating knots at both ends of the rope to ensure there's no chance of rappelling off the ends. We'll start setting up the rappel by attaching our prusik loop to the climbing rope using either an auto block hitch or a prusik hitch. This allows us to pull slack in front of the friction hitch and easily rig our ATC. Thread both strands of the rope into the ATC and clip it to the designated attachment point for your rappel device. Then, pull rope up and through the ATC and friction hitch to get your rappel rig closer to the rappel rings. This should transfer your weight off of your tether and onto your rappel rig. With your tether now loose, double check your system. Then you can remove your tether from the anchor and begin your descent, using the friction hitch primarily to control your speed.
The 2 most critical steps when setting up a rappel are 1, closing the system, that is tying knots at the end of the rope, and 2, properly transferring your load to the rappel rig before removing your tether. The former prevents you from rappelling off the end of your rope in the event your rope is too short. The latter checks that the rappel is rigged properly before committing your life to it. Situations in the single pitch where you might want to rappel include areas with top-only access or climbing routes where the anchor hardware would not allow a lower. When we clean sport anchors, we almost always want to stay on belay and lower to the ground if possible. In this video, we have covered most of the climbing skills you will need for a day of sport climbing. It's a good idea to keep your lead climbing and belaying in good practice at the gym, so that the movement feels familiar outside. Skills like anchor cleaning and rappelling should be rehearsed on the ground with appropriate supervision before attempting for the first time at the crag. Mastery of all the techniques in this video can take time, but will ultimately make for more enjoyable and responsible sport climbing.